Welcome everyone to our Digital Contracting for Net Zero series, where we explore with leaders in the field how legal teams are jumping into action to propel corporate climate action. Today, I'm joined by Bernadette Bulacon, a globally recognized mover and shaker in digital contracting. Bernadette is Chief Evangelist at Acertus, a Gartner Magic Quadrant CLM vendor. Bernadette was named a 2021 Fellow of World Commerce and Contracting, and before that, named on the prestigious ABA, American Bar Association, Women of Legal Tech. So welcome, Bernadette.
Well, Natalia, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. As you have so many stories to tell. So really, and I love your title, Chief Evangelist.
It is. It's funny because I do have a legal background. I practiced numerous years, decades, both in-house and private practice. But during that time, I also turned to helping to develop technologies for legal departments specifically. And so in this recent company, Acertus, they've adopted, it's a very common title amongst technology companies, those that'll evangelize the technology. But I actually don't feel like my bit is not to evangelize the technology as much. If you want to hear about features, functionality, I am not that person. What I'm trying to build and evangelize is how we can take this technology and use it for greater good. And this is why I have really sunk my teeth to this conversation specifically about how legal teams, procurement teams are using digitized contracts, CLM, for this greater good. And whether it is the E, the S, or the G, there are ways that you can use technology to help achieve those goals within those ESG priorities.
I love your approach. And
that's what I evangelize.
This is fantastic. So this webinar series, we've showcased what legal teams and contract management teams are doing in various industries for climate aligned contracting. And this is like the icing on the cake to end with you to see, well, where are we now? And what does the future hold? So let's start with the why, Bernadette. So why is contracting, from your perspective, a thing, as my 10-year-old boy would say, a thing in relation to net zero? And why is digital contract lifecycle management capability in particular a key enabler for climate aligned contracting? And just to throw in the mix, what shifts have you seen over the last 5 years?
Oh, goodness. Well, if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't be talking about this intersection of ESG and contracts. I would probably be talking to you about simple contract workflows, negotiating templates, maybe dynamic clause assembly, repositories. I mean, we've come so far in 5 years. So that is a trend. What these technologies can do, especially with AI and blockchain, and I know we'll turn our conversation to those advanced technologies further down in our conversation. But the fact is why now is that we have the technologies to do it, and more specifically, we have the drive and the need to do it more quickly. When I was preparing for our conversation, before I even got to the why, is I got to the who. And I specifically thought about this connection between two teams. And those teams are procurement teams that need unprecedented visibility into their supply chains, into their supplier ecosystems, and the corporate legal departments and lawyers that are helping them contract and create those bonds, those contractual bonds between between procurement teams and the suppliers that they're working with. So the why is very clear to me. Organizations, enterprises, businesses, their customers want to know that these organizations that they're buying from match their social priorities, their environmental priorities. And the way that we're seeing that is to ensure, I call it either, you can think of it either as your first line of defense or your first line of impact. I like to think of it as the ladder. Your first line of impact is to look at those commercial relationships and those commercial relationships between suppliers and buyers. So it's really the who. Again, it's procurement teams who need this unprecedented visibility into those ecosystems, and the attorneys that are helping them to ensure that within the contract they realize the intent of those sustainability initiatives and policies within those agreements. You know, we joke at iCertis, every dollar in and out of an organization is represented by a contract. And so what's the power of that dollar, that contract, if the right clauses are in place and the right teams have the technology to monitor compliance against those commitments and those obligations, and the right reporting and auditing is in place. So we went over the who, we know the why, and the fact is we can now, because the technology allows us to do that, especially with CLM technologies and as mature as they are now.
So who's driving, you know, this work? If we have an in-house legal team and saying, look, we really want to align with the strategic priorities of the organization, and there's so many pressures, right, for climate action, your investors, the customers, even employees, right? So how would you start on this journey? Is it a matter of just acquiring technology to support? What comes first?
Yeah.
Who are the key stakeholders, and how are these relationships working from your experience?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. It's and even beyond the walls of ESG, that I think there's a really great query of who owns a contract in an organization. You know, especially the supply chain agreements, where a procurement team may be in charge of the sourcing exercise and the sourcing event. They may then turn to legal to, again, embody that relationship in an agreement, and the attorney has a particular role in that, authoring the negotiation, understanding the risk, and then it gets handed off to yet another member of the organization that is managing that relationship with that supplier. So I share that because, again, the contract and those contractual obligations around the environment do not just sit in one place, in one side. So the beauty of it is that we can all own it. I think we all have a duty to own it, and we have to realize what each of our roles is while we are in partnership with a supplier. So again, one of the things that we see technology doing is, you know, maybe taking scores from a third party relating to someone's performance around ESG, companies' ESG scores and environmental scores and all of that data. And that creates a smaller universe of suppliers that we will go to for that sustainably made widget. And then it goes to legal to embody that. And so there are going to be certain clauses that you want to ensure that are in those agreements, certain covenants and commitments around how a particular widget was made and who made it. And you probably want clauses around your ability to audit those businesses and those suppliers to ensure that not only have they made those covenants at the time that they signed the agreement, but they are in fact maintaining those commitments throughout the life of the relationship. And that's where, again, outside of legal, when it's owned by the commercial managers, are there ways for us to get reminders, to get ticklers to say, don't you remember we negotiated this incredible clause to get a certification every year, or to audit this particular organization? Have we taken advantage of it? And are we taking advantage of it for our own reporting? So I share all of that because that's where the technology, where CLM technology really is at play right now, which is to take a look at your supplier base, to understand the contractual relationships that are there, to ensure that you have the right clauses in that agreement, and post execution to ensure that there's management of those obligations, active management of those obligations, whether they're embodied in auditing, regular and periodic certifications of sustainability, the ability to, again, if there's reporting necessary, to get that reporting periodically. So that's the magic, if you will. It's the first line of, again, I call it the first line of opportunity, because that's the four corners of the agreement really embody that relationship, and performance against that is all about trust. And again, that is what you want if you are in the procurement department, in the legal department, and the overall business. You want to be able to trust your contractual parties and those business relationships. And that is all embodied in the agreement.
Yeah, no, so true. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the execution and the obligation management and taking advantage. I mean, so many times lawyers are, are very creative and really work the commercial relationship to support an ongoing, work together. And if we lose track of that and we have a document that goes in the bottom drawer and is not brought to life, it doesn't serve either party, does it? So
no, I mean, how many times have you heard an attorney say, well, in my experience, I've heard numerous attorneys say, we don't own the contract, the business owns it. We'll negotiate it, we'll ensure that it's enforceable, but we don't own it. And again, what you want is for the benefit of the entire organization, that everyone owns this important goal of sustainability and protecting the environment. We all have this duty to do so.
Yeah, no, so true, so true. So when you look at organizations that have adopted contract lifecycle management, and they're relatively mature in their use, how are they driving, how are they optimizing climate aligned contracting now? Like not in the future, but right now, what strategic advantage are they driving for their organizations?
That is a really great question. The strategic advantage. It's funny, we work with a lot of organizations, and again, when you think about reputational risk that your organization might have in the event that you haven't even attempted to secure those types of commitments from your supply chain, there's a reputational risk. The other piece too is, not only if you haven't secured those contractual clauses, what happens if you have secured those contractual clauses and you've done nothing with them? That is like the risk there, the reputational risk there, that it was just performative, I think is one that organizations need to think about. And that's why I always go back to thinking about not just papering those obligations, but managing those obligations as well post-execution. So I think that you are again, the first line of defense in reputational protection to ensure that these organizations have adopted these ESG initiatives. They want to ensure that they are more than just performative. And again, they're more than just performative when you actually act on those commitments within the agreement. I do think it certainly gives suppliers that are able to demonstrate that and to be able to partake and use the technologies to demonstrate that. I think I was sharing with you. So there are organizations that are using CLM now to ensure that they are environmentally aligned. And again, some of that is using AI to take a look at all of their contractual agreements now to understand commitments that have been made to them and commitments they have made to customers or otherwise, right? Again, this level of transparency. They're using contract lifecycle management in the negotiation and authoring of contracts to ensure that, I might be in a particular jurisdiction. It requires this type of rule, ensuring that, again, the right policies are in place. And I might be a new attorney. I may not have remembered to add that clause. I may not have the right template. But again, AI is able to surface those the right clauses and the right environmental clauses. And again, I feel like I am a broken record, but using technology for the obligations management is also very key. So that's what's happening with just what I'll call run-of-the-mill standard CLM.
Yeah.
And that's AI enabled CLM, again, where contextually it knows to either surface those agreements, to surface those clauses, and then to surface those agreements where we have those obligations or those obligations have been made to us.
Fantastic. I think, in this age of volatility and change, immense accelerating change, digital contracting serves organizations in ways that old-fashioned ways of contracting simply are not designed to support. So could you talk a little bit more about scalability and the dynamic nature of digital contracting and how that drives value into organizations? Do you have any stories that you can tell in this area, Bernadette?
Oh, sure. What's been great is, again, what I've seen in the last, 5 years, 10 years is this arc of technology adoption. And that's especially true with our fellow attorneys and lawyers. As we know, lawyers love, if I were anywhere, I'd hold up my yellow pad of paper, and it's the joy of paper, whether it's books and statutes and actually redlining with a pen. What we've seen are lawyers actually adopting technology. I'm very excited about it. It's not without its own pain and challenge. And again, we realize that it's just not the way that we were trained in university and in law school. And so I want to just mention that because this is a trajectory. And so I think too often lawyers think about CLM technology just within their four walls of the legal department. What I really encourage organizations to do, and it goes back to something we talked about earlier, it's the who. And it's not just about this contract and these obligations as they travel through the legal department. It is about the supply chain and that ecosystem and the procurement team being able to achieve their goals. And for the sales team, when they have customers asking us about how we are maintaining these contractual relationships and what commitments have been made, they're able to confidently go back into the system of record, the contract system of record, and confidently say, I know who these suppliers are. I know how this has been made. And not just at the time that we sign that contract, but we are exercising that diligence throughout the life cycle of this particular business relationship. And so what we find with scaling is oftentimes it starts off as a small POC with those attorneys that are innovative and forward thinking about technology and procurement. And I am a big fan, especially with CLM, that legal departments think very big about the vision. Again, every dollar in and out of an organization is embodied in an agreement. Yes. And the agreement it has such a life beyond getting it executed from legal. And so I really encourage organizations to think enterprise-wide about their technology. Yes. And for lawyers to feel the confidence to be leaders in that innovation and to bring technology for this purpose. I'm really excited about legal department operations professionals that have been right hands to general counsel to help lead this transformation and these technology transformations. And these technology transformations will also lead and support ESG initiatives. And I think that's really exciting for legal departments to have that role.
Yeah, and I think just to elaborate on that point, I think it's wonderful. I feel our legal operations professionals, it's such a growing area to be able to talk the metrics, and by using tools such as contract lifecycle management to be able to, drive data-based decision making within the organization in the same way that other functions within corporates are able to talk the talk and metrics and numbers.
Natalia, we're in violent agreement on that front. Violent agreement. I am so excited. I mean, and again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we just didn't have that profession. And it's so exciting to see the talent that is coming to take on these legal department operation positions and the great change that they are deploying in partnership with the attorneys and other allied professionals within the corporate legal departments. It's a very exciting time. And ESG is just more fuel about why we need to have technology in legal departments. Again, if we are to take advantage of this thing that could just be a static asset, a static document, and we convert it and we digitize it and we are extracting knowledge about that particular supplier, their performance within that agreement, we can make better decisions about our suppliers, our ecosystem based on that data.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd love to move this conversation to the future, technology, and how digital contracting is likely to transform. Could we start with the key challenges as you see it now for digital contracting for NetZero? Like, where are the challenges in current software, in the infrastructure, digital infrastructure that organizations have?
Yeah, while I've talked about the fact that CLM has been around for a decade or more, we still have challenges with adoption. I think it's a particular mindset. Maybe it is with lawyers that love paper. So I think that as a general matter, we need to have ongoing legal training about the technologies that are available. Unfortunately, and I say this also just as in the wider market, there's so much uncertainty, whether it's about inflation or sanctions. And those are the areas where, again, I have to do contract analytics to make sure I'm not selling to sanction bodies, or I need to identify clauses about inflation and price adjustment. So there are things where it's just how do we make ESG a greater priority? Because again, the technology is there. So those are the two challenges. I think part of it is mindset. Part of it is just competing for mind share around this. But as I think about new policies, legislation, consumers demanding this, I know that ESG will be driving these technology revolutions and evolutions. We have another term here at iSource, we call it ACT, and it's accelerate contract transformation with ESG, because it is such a perfect use case for why technologies like CLM can support these initiatives and be transformative to your organization. And that's for the benefit of, it could be for revenue purposes, for reputational risk, for your consumers. There's just so much to think about. And I really applaud organizations who have adopted CLM. We have one company, an automotive manufacturer, that were early adopters of CLM. They were early adopters of CLM, and they had adopted CLM because they deal with thousands of suppliers around the globe. And they were not only concerned about the safety of the pieces that were going into, I can't speak car, so unfortunately I won't be able to speak very intelligently about like pieces that go into car parts. But you can imagine this this global automotive distributor wants to ensure that not only are they made to spec, but they are safe, that they are made in accordance with their own labor laws and their own labor policies. And one of the big things that they were also concerned about was to make sure that that their suppliers also reflected their environmental priorities as well. And so the problem was, they could get those assurances from their tier one suppliers, because in those tier one contracts, they were able to put those covenants, those commitments from manufacturer to that particular supplier. So that was all well and good. But the problem was that they actually needed to see beyond tier one suppliers. They needed visibility into tier two, all the way down to a raw material manufacturer. They wanted to ensure that those clauses, those commitments went all the way down to throughout the supply chain. And again, very easy to do when you're negotiating with that tier one supplier. So how do you get visibility into tier two? Well, what they were doing was, it was a whole mess of faxes and emails, here's the page and the executed agreement, but we don't want you to see who our suppliers are, said the tier one supplier. And we don't want you to see pricing. Like, that stuff should remain private. And so we'll send you the portions of the agreement that reflect this, but that's it. So here you have automobile manufacturer that needs this visibility all the way down. And for very good reasons, for very good commercial reasons, those tier one suppliers not wanting to share that contractual information with this automobile manufacturer. So one of the things that, again, this company that has embraced CLM, has embraced technology, they came to us and kind of gave us this challenge. And our response to them was, have you considered blockchain? And of course, when you say blockchain, people think of, cryptocurrencies. And we said, no, let's create a private blockchain. And what we can do is, you can have your tier one suppliers ask their tier two suppliers all the way to upload their agreements onto the blockchain. The blockchain will obfuscate, and the technology will obfuscate all of the other commercial portions of the agreement, but the AI will be able to hone in on those covenants you've made about the environment, about sustainability. And so essentially what we've created in this blockchain is the ability for this automobile manufacturer to take a look at tier one suppliers and to see which of their suppliers, tier two, tier three, further down, have made those covenants, and those covenants are within this immutable blockchain. And so speaking about data, the competitive advantage for that particular supplier is, with confidence, they can say, do you see, from here to there, all of our suppliers have made this commitment to us. The language is exactly as you've asked, and you have the ability to audit, or we have the ability to audit. And so essentially it creates this green chain of supplier and their suppliers who have committed to this, who have contractually committed to it. And those are the suppliers that I want to do more business with. So the blockchain gave them this unprecedented visibility. It took what was a very manual process of, faxes and emails and Xerox copies and, these paper folders saying like, yes, we've received this, this, and this, to something digitized. And not only digitized, but again, thinking about how they could use blockchain to be able to have very deep visibility into their supply chain. So it's, I don't want to oversell it. It is a POC, but that's the thing that I'm so excited about right now, is more companies have adopted and have been successful with CLM, you know, they will be more open, especially if they have trusted relationships with technology providers like us, to take a look at things like blockchain and try to solve problems like getting visibility into your supply chain. You know, I'm so excited that we get to partner with this particular customer to solve this problem with advanced CLM technologies. And it would not have happened had they not already experienced success, you know, kind of in with table stakes CLM. That gave them the confidence to think, is there something more we can do? And we've got all these technologists and blockchain experts at the ready trying to think of how they can use the technology to solve that problem and many more. But ESG really is ESG, whether it's about child labor, anti-slavery rules, environmental sustainability. Again, it all begins with those contractual commitments between two parties. And it's, again, your first line of opportunity and impact is in that contract.
Bernadette, I think this is such a fabulous conversation. Throughout this series of webinars, one of the key challenges that we've spoken about, the key challenge is really around that ongoing management and that performance and obligations, and how do we track that? And it's just so hugely inefficient. We have organizations that are collecting the same emails from many different suppliers who are then doing the same, and we know how email is a bugbear for all of us. So I'm really excited about the emerging technologies, blockchain and AI, to really give transparency, but only in relation to the terms that are necessary, that are important, because commercial contracts have a lot of very highly commercially sensitive information in there, right? I would be very grateful if you can just talk a little bit around why our current technology stacks are not able to deal with the complexity of business, and why we need to look to blockchain and other technologies at a high level to solve this problem of multi-enterprise to multi-enterprise and streamline. Why is our current tech stack inadequate to achieve that? And what do you see happening over the next few years?
Well, so I think that there's a maturity that is going on. I mean, it's very clear that companies are going through digital transformations of many kind. I guess I would challenge you. I think the tech stacks as currently created have the ability to do a great deal, but I just fear that the weight of the status quo sometimes feels so daunting to people. And again, lawyers, if we are looking at the legal department and the lawyers there, we are risk adverse and everything needs to be perfect the first time around. And the adoption of technology is an incredibly iterative process. There's this notion of being able to be open to failure and learning, and failing fast and learning fast. And again, I sometimes go, at least when I think about the legal department, that there's a mindset that is preventing this, that perhaps the way that I've done it is, hasn't necessarily slowed me down and hasn't given me that much trouble, but it doesn't, to an earlier point that we discussed, it doesn't scale. So I guess I feel that the current technologies, and maybe I say this because I am in technology, are able to do a great deal, but organizations are slow to adopt and to uptake. And unfortunately, I think it sometimes takes a crisis, and my example there is, one of the fuels, unfortunately for CLM technology, was COVID, for instance.
Yes.
And it took the crisis of being work from home and the crisis of needing to go to different countries and different suppliers quickly, because of quarantines or countries shutting down to ensure a resilient supply chain. It took a crisis like that to have organizations embrace technology. I hope we learn from that we don't want to be in a crisis to adopt technology, that we have tools that are more than adequate to help make substantial change. We as individuals and as professionals need to adopt them and embrace them, and to realize that this is all new territory. And so there will be learning and we will have to pivot. But by gosh, we're going to have these great learnings, and not just my organization will benefit, but the earth will benefit from this. And I think that's exciting. So do we need blockchain to do this? We don't need blockchain to do this. We need committed organizations and committed people to do this, and committed to the existing technology to move that. And I think once you have greater adoption, that's where you have the opportunity and the confidence to think even more so like blockchain. So that's what excites me the most, that the technology is there. The need is there. I just hope that it's not a catastrophe or an environmental crisis that is the driver, because we have the ability to create that change now without having the crisis be our motivator, an immediate crisis.
So. Yeah, I certainly hope so too. So just last question, your tips. So for the committed people that are going to, run with this, ensure adoption, think more broadly about the bigger problems, and technology is only an enabler. So the problem set and how it can be solved better and better to create a better working world, essentially. Yeah. What are your top tips for individuals in organizations that want to accelerate net zero through supply chains using digital contracting?
Yeah. So even before you digitize, my first tip is to take a look at your existing agreements and to understand. And the reason why I say that is because we were working with an organization and they were pleasantly surprised, because after AI surfaced all of their commitments, they felt like we are not starting from zero. Like, this has been part of our DNA. And so that was a win. Recognize that this work might already be in motion. So taking a look at your agreements. The second piece, when you take a look at your agreement, is to look at your templates right now. And I know you're working with organizations that can ensure that the right language is in those agreements and those templates. And so even before we digitize the negotiation or digitize the authoring of that agreement, we need the right contractual clauses to be there. And what I also am excited about, this is another side, is again, making sure that that you, either through a manual process or hopefully digitally, are ensuring that not only are you looking to make sure that those important clauses are in your agreement, that you are consistently, periodically checking to ensure that there is a high performance against those clauses, whether it is reporting, audits, certifications, or otherwise. Make sure that that compliance is easy, and failure to comply, make it painful. I don't know. That's a good question. I know you're going to ask me, how do you make it painful? And that's probably another conversation. So again, I guess my three tips is to celebrate and find, because you probably already have some of this already in motion. Take a look at your templates to ensure that the right language is there or made available, and you train your contracting teams, your lawyers, to recognize that language needs to be there. And not only train your lawyers, but your procurement teams as well on the importance of that language. And then finally, to ensure that this is not just performative, that's to check the box that you've added this language, but that you are monitoring and managing those obligations throughout the life of that contractual relationship.
Spot on, Bernadette. Look, thank you so much. You inspire. I'm sure you've inspired all of our audience to think about the problem space, contracting for net zero, and the opportunities that technology brings to streamline, efficient, make great efficiency, and at the end of the day, be more effective for the goals and strategies of their organizations that they serve. I'm going to end with Ernest Hemingway. The earth is a fine place and worth fighting for. Thank you, everyone, and a huge thank you to you, Bernadette. It's been a fabulous conversation. I'm Natalia Sinimarkovic, Fellow with the Centre for Legal Innovation. Till next time.